Hi, I'm Suki.
And I'm Claire.
Welcome to Getting Psychic, where you can listen to us use ourselves to test the theory that anyone can get psychic. Da-da-da-da-da. Hello, welcome. Today, Claire and I are here with Dr. Meggie Smith. Meggie practices chiropractic energy medicine. She is passionate about helping people heal the emotional and physical stresses that are impacting their body-mind. She applies the chiropractic approaches of biogeometric integration, network spinal and neural emotional technique with the energy work of the chakras and teachers like Carolyn Mace. Welcome, Dr. Maggie.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
We're going to have fun. You came up a few episodes ago because you've been helping Claire, and I would love to know from both of you how you met and from both of your perspectives what you've experienced or accomplished working together.
I'll start. Hi, Maggie.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Suki.
Hi.
So chiropractic first, which is the name of the studio right now that Meggie works out of, was owned by a different chiropractor many years ago. And when I was 19 or 20-year-old, I started going to see that chiropractor. At some point, Meggie took over and I started needing more work done. And my dad and stepmom had been seeing Meggie and were like, she's as amazing. And so let's go. And immediately I connected with Meggie really easily and very well, which is actually very difficult for my body to do. Not everyone can work on me. I can often get really actually quite fucked up from getting energy sessions from people. So it was this massive relief to me that I now had somebody that could work on me, but also just in a personable way, I just immediately knew we vibed well together and I could probably talk about anything and Meggie would be very open to it and smirk and laugh at me when necessary, which she does. And so it has moved between, I've gone in for when I have not been taking care of myself and everything has started seizing up and it's like, oh, you waited too long. But it's like a couple sessions and things start unwinding. And just recently, I've been in physical therapy 3 days a week. And as soon as I came home, I started going back to see Meggie because I knew that, oh, actually, hold on, rewind. While I was in the hospital or, what was it
The
called?
rehab place.
Yeah, the rehabilitation place. Meggie came and gave me a session there, which changed my healing game. Because, well, I don't actually know why, but I started sleeping better. My lower back and hips stopped hurting. I mean, I was in a bed, almost 24 hours a day. So it opened something for everything else to move, I believe. And so when I got back home, I started coming in more. And just recently, I've been going in weekly. And this week at PT, suddenly I can do everything like really easily. Like I'm transferring from my wheelchair really easily. I'm getting up on all
Amazing.
fours. Like I got up on all fours and then pushed myself up on a chair. Like it's crazy. I have to do this. It's called the 6-minute push test, where I basically have to, in my wheelchair, push in a circuit um, for 6 minutes and see how long I can go. And the past 2 times I've gone 800 feet. And the other day I went 1,000 feet. And it was one of those things. They're like, what is it? Like, what happened? And I'm like, I turned a corner. And then I was like, I've been seeing Meggie every week. And I know that that's a correlation. I have no idea what she's doing to me. And I actually, when it comes down to it, I don't care. Because I feel things open. I feel my breath moving in different places. And I know it alters something.
All right, Meggie, you want to tell us what you've been doing?
So how'd you do that?
So how did I do that? Right. So I think there's sort of a bunch of answers to that. One of them is I can tell you technically what I do. To tell you why it is that people heal from what I do is a much more kind of unknowable question. I'm helping Claire connect in with herself more. There's so many different ways to answer that question, and I'm not sure any of them are true, to be honest,
Okay.
right? I mean, there's like the science of like the neurology, right? And I could tell you about how neurologically I'm like down regulating her sympathetic system and upregulating the parasympathetics, and how, parasympathetic is your rest and digest state. And so part of what I'm doing is just helping increase her self-regulation, increase that parasympathetic healing state. And that may be true, and that may be part of it. There are ways we can think about what I'm doing in terms of just finding the old tension patterns, right? That over the course of our lives, we have physical, chemical, emotional stresses that are more than we can handle in the moment. And so what we do in those moments is we hold on to them until it is time to process them. And so what I'm doing with Claire is every time she comes in, we just start working through those old stress patterns, which I often describe a lot like the mail that comes into my house. It comes in, it often just gets thrown on the table. Some of that mail is incredibly important. A lot of that mail is junk, but until I actually physically go through it and throw it away or file it or do whatever I need to do with it, it just piles up. And so in some ways, what I'm doing is just going through, the stresses and the things that have happened in Claire's life that are more than she could process, which there's certainly been plenty of recently. And then there's more space, right? Like you throw away the mail and the table has more space on it. And then there's a better ability to use that table to do all the things you want to do.
Yeah.
Which is more of a metaphorical answer, but.
Well, that's fine.
No, that
Claire's
works.
the table in this situation, right?
Right. Yes.
So what is chiropractic energy medicine?
So chiropractic has a lot of different types, right? If you've ever seen a chiropractor, or you've seen 2 or 3, you know that they can practice incredibly differently. It's kind of like going to see a medical doctor. Like some of them are surgeons, some of them are pediatricians. Like it's a very broad distinction, but a lot of them tend to deal with the physicality of our bodies, right? Chiropractic, whether you're talking about your bones and your muscles, as many chiropractors do, or you're talking about your nervous system, and your brain and your spinal cord and your nerves, that's still like the physicality of your body, the biochemistry of your body, right? Like we're still talking about that like physical body that we inhabit. The energy medicine piece that chiropractors do incorporate, not all of them, but certainly the ones that I studied with, are aware that it's all energy, right? Like, there is a density to our physical bodies that's different than the density of the energetic fields we're in. What I'm aware of is how the bones, the muscles, the organs are vibrating, are holding that energy, are a part of that larger system of like sometimes those physical, chemical, emotional stresses that I'm working on are in the body, right? Are they in the muscles? Is it in the organs, or is it in the field, right? Is it like here or here? Like, is it outside the body? It doesn't really matter to me whether it's outside the body or inside the body. It's what is showing up to move through. And so chiropractic energy medicine kind of brings together the physicality of chiropractic that I really like, that grounded, like we are here being people on Earth School and we're here to be in these physical bodies. And also there's all this other stuff going on, right? And how do we bridge that gap? And chiropractic energy medicine holds the space for both to be true.
Amazing. Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, so how did you end up here?
I was a patient of this work. I graduated from college and really had an incredibly hard time with that transition away from the like nice structure of accomplishments that I had been very good at. And my system just really kind of went into a very dysregulated state. I thought maybe I was manic depressive. I thought maybe I was bipolar. I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew that the ups and downs and the highs and lows of my system were not normal. And I was scared. And I went to see a bunch of psychotherapists. And I was like, I think, like, I think I need medication. Which is, while not a shameful thing, certainly a scary thing to admit, when you get to that point of being like, I need help. The way my body experiences life isn't appropriate for the experiences I know that I'm having, right? Like I could see that disconnect between what I was feeling and what was happening. And I saw a bunch of psychotherapists and they're like, no, I think you're okay. And I was like, oh, I am not okay. Like, this is not like a let's talk through it. Psychotherapy is very important. I love my therapist. This was not that. And so then my mom said, well, there's this woman that people have seen and she's helped a lot of people. So go see her. I went and saw her. I told her what was going on. And she's like, yeah, no kidding. Like, of course that's what's happening. She saw it. And she did similar to what I do, like gently touch my body in a bunch of spots. And she was like, doot, doot, doot. All right, there you go. I went home that night. I felt worse than I had felt in years. And I was like, well, I mean, at least she did something, right? At least she like saw me and impacted my body in some way. And the next day I felt better and I felt just like more stable, more calm, more like the reactions I was having internally matched the world around me again.
Wow.
And so it just, it changed my life as a patient. I stayed in my corporate job for another couple of years and finally admitted this was the path I was supposed to be on.
Amazing.
Did you keep seeing her?
So she was in the Chicago suburbs. Shortly after I started seeing her, I moved to New York.
Okay.
So I found somebody who does similar work in New York, and started seeing her.
So how much does intuition play a role in your work?
It's a huge part of my work. I'd say it's probably about 90% of what I do. Is that like awareness of what is very subtly changing in people's systems.
Yeah. Did you hone that understanding as you learned, or did you come into the practice?
I think it's a lot of both. I think, intuition, I think is a pretty human skill, kind of like being musical or being athletic. Like I could certainly learn to play basketball. I would be very bad at it, but I could, but I could do it. And I think intuition is that similar like balance of, you have an inherent talent for something and then you hone it. So I came into chiropractic school with a fair amount of intuition, and then through chiropractic school and afterwards, I really learned how to specifically target the things that I needed to be intuitive about, which are like putting my hands on you and saying like, oh, this pain is more chemical. Like, what have you been eating recently? Or, oh, this pain is, pulling through this chakra. Like, what's going on emotionally? Or like that sort of specifically targeted things that I needed my intuition to be able to do for me.
Mhm.
I then learned.
Cool. We've talked about like a lot of the energetic element of what you do, but could you also help someone to correct spinal curvature, for example?
Yeah. So I can certainly help people with like those basic musculoskeletal issues, right? Headaches, back pain, migraines. There's plenty of people who come in who that's all we talk about, right? I don't talk about the intuitive stuff. I don't talk about most people, frankly, I don't talk about that stuff with. They come in for headaches, they come in for whatever. I do my thing, their headaches go away, they're happy, they leave.
Do you ever feel that you have to conceal your spirituality in your work?
Claire's smiling at me, but yes, all the time. How much is that my own internal struggle versus how much is that other people's desire? I think is something that I'm continuing to work on. This was never something I wanted. I don't have any real interest in. Had I been able to choose my life path, I would not have chosen something this kind of off the weird, right? So learning to say more fully and more truthfully what I am doing with people is a real struggle and challenge for me to be honest about what's going on, because I don't have to talk about it. People can come in,
Yeah.
I'm a chiropractor. I can do chiropractor tests. I can like do my thing and I can be like, yeah, it's chiropractic. And they can be happy that their pain is gone. And most people don't care what I'm doing. They just want to feel better. And
Mm-hmm.
so they don't need to know. And so we don't talk about it. Some people get curious. Some people I feel like I can share some of that with. But some people I'm not sure it won't get in the way of their healing. Right. I mean, to go down some of those roads can be intense. And I'm also not a psychotherapist. Right. And so I think it's really important to be really careful about what I say to people, because I don't have the ability. I don't have the training. I don't have the time. I don't have the response. It's not responsible for me to just kind of drop some of those things in, the way I can with Claire, because I know if I'm like, oh yeah, well that's some stuff you came in with. That's kind of karmic stuff. That's whatever. She's going to be like, oh yeah, kind of like laugh and keep going, as opposed to someone else who'd be like, whoa,
Yeah. You
stop the
just
presses. What do this
Yeah.
isn't all in my head, right? My pain, you're kind of minimizing my pain by suggesting it's emotional. Like people have a lot of feelings about that stuff.
One of the things that you and I talked about that I then brought up with Suki that made her go, what? Was working on babies, working on children, and the connection between the mother and baby. When you're talking to a parent about their child, how hard is that to go into you two are very connected and I have to work on both of you simultaneously?
It's incredibly hard. I would say it's not a conversation I have that often. I think that, there are babies, like anyone can kind of come into my office needing help in different ways, right? Sometimes it is just the physical, like birth is a very traumatic physical process, right?
Yes.
And so sometimes it is just straight up like, yeah, the baby's shoulder was in a weird position. I need to help the baby's shoulder or jaw, like just physically realign in a very typical chiropractic way. Sometimes it's stuff that they came in with, karmically, whatever. It's not the mom stuff unless it's, generational, but it's also like, for whatever reason, this person has decided to express a lot of their stuff very young. And maybe I would share that with a parent. Whether I would say like, yeah, this is just their stuff. This is just who they are, versus like, oh, this is their, their karma and whatever. I mean, you can present that different ways to different people. And then if I get that sense that if it's not releasing, right, then what Claire, you guys were talking about on podcast before, was that time that happens sometimes when kids aren't letting go of what's in their body. And that's rare, right? Babies tend to heal pretty quickly. They're not attached to their stuff, right? They don't like
Right.
have a diagnosis of arthritis. So they're just like, okay, I can let this go. When babies don't let stuff go pretty easily, that's when I start thinking it's in the family dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, if the parents are under care already, I will tend to be like, let's get you on the table. Let's get you adjusted to. If the parents aren't already under care, that's a harder conversation to have, because it can come off as kind of accusatory. It can come off as kind of like, well, this is your fault that your kid's this way, right? People hear things in different ways.
It's so interesting.
Right. And then you're sort of finding yourself in a position where it's like, either I explain my perception of the non-physical realities, or
right,
just casually to you at this moment, or I figure out a different approach. But it is interesting because I feel like we do have a lot of listeners, and I walk this line myself, sort of working out how to come out of the spiritual closet in a way, like how we incorporate it into our lives and our work without having to be responsible for someone's understanding of the universe.
right.
It's complicated.
Yeah, it's hard. And, I have a really big population of Orthodox Jewish patients in the practice. I am not Jewish, but So I don't specifically know a lot about their tradition, but a lot of that kind of shorthand of like different religious traditions will just have a kind of their own understanding of it, right? So I
Yeah.
find that people who have any sort of religious, spiritual tradition, sometimes you can kind of just like touch into that stuff and they don't need the whole explanation.
Mm.
So I'm working on being brave. You know?
Yeah, I was going to say, so are you content with where you are? Or do you feel like when you say I'm working on being brave, it kind of leads me to believe that you might want to like let it rip a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's, Claire and I did she did my reading, was that a couple months ago, a year ago, whenever that was, January, February. And she was saying that like now is really a time for me to start stepping out more into my truth.
Yeah,
And I think that's true. I think there's a lot of people who, listen to your podcast who like this stuff.
totally. Beautiful.
And so, yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah, well, this is a great step, just publishing,
Yeah,
putting
no
this out,
kidding. You're
putting
telling
this
me.
out into the world. Your patients will now just look up your name and here you'll be.
Great.
Okay, so I want to I got this list of stuff you help with from your website.
Okay.
So, what we help with: chronic pain, migraines and headaches, back pain, injuries, mental health and wellness, stress. And this is something I really want to look at. Is it anxiety or intuition? Will you please unpack that for us?
So that's a series of videos or things that I wrote early on in COVID, right? As we were all both having a lot of anxiety. I think one of the steps in becoming more psychic, intuitive, whatever you want to call it, is going through this phase of like just becoming much more hyper aware of what you're feeling. So I think that there are times when it's hard to know, right? Like this gut feeling I have that's like, oh my God, something bad's going to happen. It's like, well, is that my intuition telling me that, or is that my just anxiety telling me that? I think that can be a hard line to work on, to figure out. So there are sometimes I say to people, like, if it's a little thing, just do it. Just like when I was working on my intuition in grad school, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, like panicked that my car was going to get hit or that a tree was going to fall on it. Or I was like, I got to go move my car. I was like, what's the likelihood you need to go move your car right now? Like, do you really need to go move your car right now? And so for a little while, I decided, you know what? I just want my internal system, my guides, whoever it is, to know that like I'll do the thing, right? Like even if it seems crazy, I will listen when I get the information. So I'm going to go move my car. Not because I think my car is really going to get hit, but because I think it's important to engage. If this is a test, I will do what you want me to do. So I think there's sometimes when it doesn't matter, you just start doing the things because you get the information.
Yeah.
But there are other times when it isn't, right? When it is just anxiety. How do you start playing with that difference?
So I was wondering, like, did you sort of work out any little ways to differentiate?
Like where do I feel this? I think one of the things I suggested people do is think back on past events, right? Like think about a time when you were anxious and like ultimately you were right. Ultimately, that was your intuition. Like how did that feel? Right? Like what was the feeling in your body? And then in the moment notice, right? Like I have this anxiety. Okay. What, do I feel it in my throat? Do I feel it in my chest? Like what are the physical symptoms that I'm having of this feeling? And then an hour, a week later, when you can conclude with more certainty, like this was anxiety or this was intuition, then you can notice that, right? Like, oh, I notice when I feel it in my throat, that's anxiety. I notice when I feel that same feeling in my chest, that tends to be more intuitive, right? Like for
Yeah.
me, if I'm like feeling kind of out of my body, like I'm feeling more ungrounded, that tends to be anxiety. My intuition is more centered in my core.
Mm-hmm.
So like, where am I feeling that feeling? That can be one way of distinguishing those two things.
Yeah, that's cool. What percentage of the physical issues that you treat are connected to emotions?
Maybe like half,
Oh,
maybe more. I think there are times when it's very strongly an emotional experience. Um, and then there are times when like people have this thing go, whatever is going on. It's like a lot of things, right? Like the reason I think that this is where they store things. I'll sometimes say like, well, this is kind of your junk drawer, right? Like whenever you have a stress, it goes to your shoulder. So some of the stresses in your shoulder are going to be emotional. Some of them are going to be physical. Some of them are going to be chemical. And we're just kind of moving through. So one day it might be like, oh, today this is a lot of grief that's coming up. Right. And then the next time I might be like, okay, yeah, grief cleared through pretty well. Now it's more anger. Right. Or like, there are going to be different emotions coming through in different ways, depending on what's going on in someone's life.
Also, you mentioned Carolyn Mace in your bio. We love talking about her.
Yes.
Did you study her teachings?
Yeah, I mean, so I've read a bunch of her books. I've been to a bunch of her seminars. I met her briefly. She would have no idea who I am, but but yes, she's definitely, even before before I quit my corporate job to go into this, I started reading her work, and I feel like she was somebody who gave me a lot of confidence to take that leap.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing.
She's great.
So do you have anything more to say about that? Like, is there something like really profound that she taught you that you incorporate into your work, or is it just kind of like an overarching understanding?
It was funny as I was thinking about this talk today. When I saw Claire on Monday, she's like, it's going to drive Sookie crazy that you're going to be like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. This is just the way it goes to a lot of things. And so I thought about this Carolyn Mays quote that I pulled up before this recording. Because this one, like, there's this quote that I have written down that I sometimes think about a lot, which is, the moment you come to trust chaos, you see God clearly. Chaos is divine order versus human order. Change is divine order versus human order. When the chaos becomes safety to you, that's when you know you're seeing God clearly. And that sort of like willingness to just like be in the like, this is bigger than me. This is bigger than us. I show up, I do my thing. And like, that has been important to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Early on in COVID, she did a workshop series. That was as a person in the world, but also as a small business owner and a person who has to touch people to do my job. Or COVID lockdown was scary and hard in a lot of ways. And she talked about how the world went from being the world to like stopping, right? Like the whole world just stopped, like in an instant. And that was just unimaginable. And that the unimaginable is the purview of the divine, right? And so she's like, look, we don't know what's going on here. We don't know why things needed to stop. We don't know what the divine was preventing from happening by stopping the world. But like, this is the kind of thing that just like, you gotta roll with it because this is the divine in action and we don't know. And I think that was really helpful to me in those times of being like, yeah, this is so unimaginable. This is enough, right? Like this is bigger than us.
Yeah. There's more where that came from. Yeah. I feel very blessed to have that perspective, even occasionally.
Yeah.
Just curious, what is something for work or in life that you really want to learn?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I'll just start here and we'll keep going till I say something interesting. I do feel like that one of the things I'm really working on right now is sort of that question you asked of like, how do I talk about what I do? Right? Like, how do I explain this? What do I want to say? How do I want to say it? I feel very confident in what I do every day, right? People come into my office and I feel very able to do my job, and most of them heal and some of them don't. And I don't know why the ones who don't heal, but I also know that like, I don't have to be the person that helps everyone. So I feel very grounded and very clear in the like craft of what I do. But then to ask that question of like, how come Claire is getting better? And I'm like, I don't know. Right? Like, why is this working? Why, how much do I need an answer to that? How much do I want to be able to talk more publicly about what it is that happens internally for me? I want to be able to express that in a bigger way, in a more clear way. And I think learning how to do that is kind of what's up next.
Yeah, I just got like chills all over my body. So
Yeah.
seems like a great plan.
Yeah. I think it's and it feels like it's starting to come up. So we'll
Yeah,
see where it goes.
I, I'm excited for you. That's awesome.
And I think part of that process of trying to figure out how I am saying who I am is as a rebrand of my practice, right? As Claire said at the beginning of this podcast, Chiropractic First is a practice that I bought in 2012 from a woman named Dr. Liz Erkenswick, who had built this amazing practice and practiced similarly to me. But, chiropractic just isn't a great word for what I do. I was taught by chiropractors, but when you hear the word chiropractic, you don't think of what we're talking about, right? Most people don't, at least. And so I'm in the process of rebranding the practice and naming it Cora something, Cora Health, Cora. The rest of that hasn't come to me yet.
Hmm.
But I spent years trying to figure out what I wanted to rename my practice, and Coras with an S is the Irish word for systems. I talk a lot in the practice about how we're a system, right? We're bigger than the sum of our parts. There's your physical body, your energetic body, your nervous system, there's all these different parts of our bodies, and they all come together to create this experience we have of being human. And it's not any one part, but it's the whole system. And so Cora is the word that I'm using to talk about that new expression of the healing that happens in the practice.
That's awesome. And I mean,
Cora is also, additionally, Cora, I found out after I decided this, um, Cora is the Celtic goddess of rebirth and regeneration, and she's associated with serpents. But there aren't a lot of snakes in Ireland. And so they think that myth of St. Patrick, who came into Ireland and pushed out all the snakes, which has never made sense because there don't seem to have ever been any snakes in Ireland, was actually about Christianity coming in and pushing out the pagan Cora
totally
goddess. So we're going back to
amazing.
those. And I have really felt very strongly that my Celtic ancestors are a big part of this practice. And
Absolutely.
then they're really showing up in some much bigger ways than they had been in the past before I was ready for them to be here. And now
Yeah,
I feel more
that's
ready, so they're
beautiful.
showing up.
That's amazing. I mean, a name is so profound, really. I mean, words and language and taking over representing your business with a name that you have decided on is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting and scary, but it's a big step.
Yeah. Claire and I are both extremely excited that we can play a part at all in you exposing your gifts.
Well, thank you. I had a new patient come in yesterday, and she put on her intake form that Claire had referred her. And I was like, oh, that's fun, right? I mean, Claire's referred people to me in the past. And so I say to the patient, I was like, oh, so Claire sent you in. Like, Claire's great. She's like, actually, I heard you on the podcast. And I was so
Amazing.
excited. I was like, oh, that's because I'm famous. That's why you've heard her. And Claire just sent this person in because Claire sends people to me. I would have been like, oh, thanks. That's nice. But it felt
But
like a whole different level of
oh yeah, you're
yeah.
totally famous.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
amazing. Just wait. Just wait.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
beautiful. I'm so excited about that. Okay, so do you have any beautiful or miraculous stories that you want to share about your practice?
Oh, that's a good question. One of the ones that often pops into my head is a story about a woman who came to me for hip pain. She was like in her 60s, and she came in and she was seeing me for a couple months, and then we sat down to do a check-in evaluation. And she said to me, I got to be honest, my hip pain really, it's not much better. You really haven't helped me much with my hip pain. But what I've noticed is that I'm so much more patient with my kids. And like, I'm just better able to be present. And she had adult children, and she's like, I'm not so attached to them needing to be the way I want them to be, and I'm able to just be present with who they are as people. And um, she attributed that to my work. Um, and that kind of like, we don't know how people are going to heal, right? Like, we don't know what people need to heal. We don't, we all have our ideas of um, what people want to have happen when they come into my office. And I always hope that they get those results. But it's the stuff that they'll say to me, like, so I've noticed. I've noticed I'm sleeping better. I've noticed I'm more patient with my kids. I've noticed I'm, whatever it is that they weren't expecting. But once their body starts healing, it just starts healing. Those are the things that I also really like when
Yeah.
people just have better times with their kids, more able to be present in their world and in their body and in their lives. Like that's the cool stuff.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
I had a student who was in my office a couple years ago, and he was adjusting someone and like was getting really frustrated because he was very skilled and that was very important to him, that he was good at what he did. And so he calls me over and he's like, I can't get this pattern. I can't get this thing to release. There was this, tension pulling through this woman's stomach, and he recognized he needed some help. So he come, he's like, will you do this? So I went over to the patient and I put my hands on her, and I was like, oh, that doesn't want to release. Like, the reason you can't get that tension in her stomach to release is it doesn't want to go yet. But there was this like other tension, pulling through somewhere else that did. And so then like I was like, okay, well, that's fine. Right. I mean, this stuff in your stomach doesn't have to release. I don't have any attachment to what releases what you heal today. And so I helped the other thing release. And then as soon as that one released, the stomach stuff just released on its own. And it was
Amazing.
like, did that release on its own? Because before the stomach thing could release, this other thing had to release. And he had been so focused on the stomach thing that he wasn't seeing what was on top. Was it that the patient could sense his attachment to this release? And the patient was like, don't tell me what to do. Like, I don't like this attachment, and his ego around trying to be good at the thing. And once I was like, my lack of attachment to her healing, then it was a safe space, right? Then we had created this container of like, whatever you want to do, like whatever shows up, I'm cool with. Then her body was like, oh, okay. Right. Like,
Yeah.
then I have the space, right? Like, how often what I do in my work is simply show up, put my hands on someone, and I'm like, you don't have to do anything today. You want to just lay here for half an hour and I'll just like touch you and you'll just lay there, and that's fine with me. And there's a lot of people's bodies who I will do that with for half an hour, maybe usually it doesn't take that long. Usually once their body will be like, really, you're not going to try to make me change? And I'm like, really, I'm not going to try to make you change. Because they've been through this medical system over and over again. That's like, I'm going to fix you. This like top down, like, this is what's wrong with you. This is what I'm going to do to make your body different. And when someone shows up who's just like, we can just chill. Like, you want to lay here and I'm just going to like create safety and know that like you're okay. Like, you're okay right here, right now. And sometimes that takes like 20 minutes of them being like, really? Like, really? And then they're like, okay, well, if that's the case, like this little thing, like, and then they'll kind of test me of like, what if I present you this big thing and this little thing? And I'm like, let's just do the little thing, right? Like, really, I'm not attached to pushing you. And a lot of people's systems just need that safety of like, I'm not gonna like make you change. I'm not gonna make you heal. I'm not gonna put my own agenda on your process.
That's beautiful.
And like, what opens up when you give people systems that kind of space, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We're probably going to wind it down, but I do want to officially thank you. I know Claire and I are so grateful for you being vulnerable about your spiritual path. And I feel like part of our light work can be about just sharing that vulnerability. And I think that also sharing your path towards coming out spiritually is going to make a really big impact on a lot of people. So,
Yeah. Well, I was excited to be asked
yeah,
to be on the podcast. So thanks for having me.
yeah, we're super grateful. So, Thank you so much. And don't be surprised when you see me on your books,
Awesome. Look
like
forward
instantly.
to it.
I can't
You and
wait.
Claire can come in together. We can work through whatever your podcast
Oh my
attachment
God.
issues are. We can
That would be hilarious.
do a little.
Bye, Meggie. Bye, Claire.
Bye, Suki. Bye, Claire. I'll see you on Monday.
Bye, Suki. Bye, Dr. Meggie. See you Monday.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. Be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss a new episode. If you liked today's episode, please consider leaving a review to help the other psychics find their way here.